All right, so let's start with why we're here. So for the last 6 years, Susan and I have partnered together, and we've gone out into the field to do research, asking questions that we think agency owners and leaders want to know. And so you can access all of these studies. We'll give you a URL later. But every year we go out and we ask a little bit of a different question. And this year was a little different in that we went back and asked some of the same questions, and we had some more. So the three partners of this are AMI, Susan's company, Audience Audit, and then we use panels to get the right folks to answer the questions, and Dynata is our panel sponsor. So, all right. So we went back and we did, our very first study was in 2014, and we asked clients why they hired agencies. And so we're going to show you very quickly what the 2014 data showed, and then we're going to contrast it with what we learned in 2019. So one of the things that we did was in 2014, we had much smaller budgets in our pool, so it was $1 million or less. You're going to see a much broader base of budgets in this piece of research. So we're going to be able to slice and dice attitudes based on budget. And one of the other questions we had is a lot of agencies are finding that their competition is not just who's in town anymore, but all around the country and the globe. So we specifically wanted to study and get some information about how clients felt about working with agencies out of their local market. And then the last thing was, I'm always preaching to agency owners, work on the business, not in the business, but there are times when an agency owner does need to lean into the business and have interaction with their clients and create that relationship. So we wanted to study what do clients actually want from us in terms of how do we show up, when do we show up, so we're going to show you some of that data as well. All right, so, and then obviously what we're going to talk about is what does all of this mean and how does it relate to content? So we're going to give you some content strategies based on the data towards the tail end of the presentation.
So the first thing I want to show you is who participated in our study this year. And then Drew's going to take you through sort of what we saw last year, and we'll be able to compare the two. So this year, we had 1,060 agency clients. Okay? Over 600 of those were from the US. We also have respondents from Canada, the UK, and Australia. So that's sort of our survey respondent group. We have a range of agency budgets. So as Drew said, in 2014, we just had these folks, the under 250 and the 250 to $1 million. This year, we've got a big group of folks who have from $1 million to actually $20 million in annual marketing budget, not including salaries.
And that's gross budget, not AGI.
Mm-hmm. We've got B2C, B2B, B2G, and as you could tell from the numbers, a lot of folks are more than one. So we've got a whole range, and one of the things you're going to be able to see as you look at the study is once after our webinar, you're going to be able to get an interactive visualization of all this data that lets you look at all of it based on whether the clients were B2B or B2C or what size they were, what their budgets were, whatever. So you can.
So we're going to let you play with the data so it's even more relevant to you specifically.
So first, let's look at the attitudinal segment. So have any of you seen our agency research studies before? Okay, so some of you have. So the core of what we're doing is looking at attitudinal segments among these folks. So whereas you may see a lot of segmentation that's based on, say, client size or industry, our segmentation is based on how they feel about things. So in this case, how they feel about agencies, what they're looking for, what kind of relationships they want to have with their agencies. That segmentation analysis is organic. We basically put a whole bunch of attitudes in front of them. We don't know what we're going to see in terms of how many attitudes show up in certain groups. So we don't know how many buckets that we're going to have, and we don't know what's going to determine those buckets, right? So it's all organic, and it's sort of like Christmas when the data comes in and we look and see what it says, okay? So that's what you're going to see today, and then we gather a lot of that other information about what they want, how big they are, whether they have an in-house team or not, and how big it is, and we can look at it through this lens to help us understand them a little better, okay? So let's talk about 2014.
All right, so in 2014, we found three distinct segments, and we gave them names. So the first segment was about 30% of the surveyed population, and we called them looking for love. These are the clients that we want to have. They think of their agency as their whoopee. We are their thinking partner. They want to set strategy sessions, all of that. And typically, they want to have one agency partner, right? The second group, and at that point, oh, I'm sorry. So
That's okay.
Critical partners, long-term relationships. So these guys want to get married to their agency, right? And they also want their agency to have an opinion about and influence their business beyond marketing, all right? So the second group was the playing the field group. So this is a group of folks who is going to have multiple agencies, and they think about us a little differently. We are, to this group of people, a necessary evil. They cannot get their job done without us, but they sort of begrudgingly work with agencies. They also believe, which hurts you right here in the heart a little bit, that even if we're doing a great job, it is to their benefit to change things up, to challenge us by putting the account out for review or just hiring out to somebody else. They also want smaller agencies because for this group, it's important that they feel like the big fish in our pond. So they believe that agencies that are smaller are more attentive to them and make them a bigger deal inside the shop. And in 2014, and you'll see a shift in this, in 2014, and as a over 40 person, it hurts me to say this, they valued youth in agencies much more than experience. They wanted enthusiasm. Remember that this was 6 years ago, so this was a lot of people were just really wrapping their arms around content and social
Digital.
and all of that. And so in their head, if you were over 40, you couldn't possibly understand that stuff. So that's what they were thinking in 2014. And then the last segment was what we call single and satisfied. And quite honestly, they don't think they need us. So they already have a pretty locked down marketing plan. They have a good strategy. They don't need agencies for that. What they did want, though, is they know what they want in terms of marketing, and they just want us to help them execute. And in 2014, and this will be significant when we talk about the 2019 results, they did believe that we were a great source of ideas, tactical ideas, that they then could take from us, because we love it when they do that, and execute internally, right?
So those are the segments we found 2014, 5 years ago. So going into the study here, we didn't assume that we would see the same things. Remember, we've got a whole list of attitudes. We had the ones from 2014, plus we added some new ones that we'd seen among agency clients in the intervening years of our research. And basically threw it all out there again to see if anything had changed. So 1,060 agency clients versus the 271 we had in 2014. So a bigger pool of respondents. Back in 2014, everybody had a budget of $1 million or less. We're going all the way up to $20 million this year. 25% of our respondents this year have budgets over $10 million. So we've got the really little guys, the under 250,000. We've got the much bigger guys and everything in between. We did put in some additional attitudinal statements for them to rate. We see the same segments in 2019 that we saw in 2014. Now we're going to show you some things that have changed, but what has not changed are the fundamental attitudes that for these groups of people link together for them. The things that define them as a segment in terms of how they think about agencies. You heard Drew talk about it. What kind of interaction that they want with agencies and what agencies can expect from them as a client have not fundamentally changed in those 5 years, which is striking. Now, we did see some adjustments. So that looking for love group, the would-be group, right? One of the things we did see added this year is an attitude that marketing takes a lot of technical expertise these days, among a belief among this group, which we did not see back in 2014. So there is a heightened recognition that this ain't easy among this population anyway. And in 2019, this is the group that now believes that smaller agencies are more focused on client needs. You remember, Drew said in 2014, it was that large middle group, that playing the field group. Not anymore. Now it's these folks who are embracing the smaller agencies. For our playing the field folks, changes. They are much more willing to admit now than they were 5 years ago that they don't know what they're doing. They say their organizations don't know what they're doing with marketing, that they don't consider marketing a high priority, and that outside marketing help costs more than it should. So not only are these folks working with a lot of agencies, changing agencies out, but really the value of what agencies provide for these folks is markedly lower in terms of cost and benefit than some of the other groups that we see. Now, they outsource a lot of marketing. They use a lot of agencies. They spend a lot of money. So they're out there hiring agencies, but recognize they sort of have a different perspective about what those agencies are bringing to the party. And this year, they only engage agencies when they have a specific activity in mind. It is a much more focused thing. They have already decided when they go looking for an agency what they want that agency to do. Single and satisfied in 2019, still very confident about their in-house abilities, okay? They are less likely now than they were back in 2014 to say that we as agencies are a good source of ideas. Isn't that heartening? All right, so when you look at, here's our 2014 overall, here's our 2019 overall. So you look at these two charts, and it doesn't look like there's that much of a change, right? We have a little increase in the playing the field, a little decrease in the looking for love, and single and satisfied has stayed about the change. But that belies something that more fundamentally is going on. Here is the $1 million or less group. Okay? That was all we had in 2014. When we look at the $1 million or less in 2019, we see something has in fact changed. So 29% on the looking for love back then, it's now up to 40%. And it's really at the expense of these single and satisfied folks and the playing the field. So the good news is for clients that are $1 million or less, that would-be agency is more prevalent in terms of the kind of relationship that these folks with the smaller budgets want to have.
So that's the give and take, right? Those are the clients we all want, but we have to recognize they're going to have smaller budgets, right? Okay.
Here's the bad news. These are the folks over $10 million in budgets. Okay. Here is the 10 million or less, right? Doing okay there. Look at this, 54% when you're over 10 million in 2019 are in that playing the field group, and only 15% are looking for love.
So again, remember, that's the group that's going to have multiple agencies, that wants to hire us for something very specific, all the things that we don't ideally want to do with our clients, right?
Yeah. So if you're an agency who wants that would-be relationship, you have a really tough row to hoe if you're going for these big budgets, because they are just not in that headspace. By the way, this playing the field segment, that one that likes to change agencies out all the time and give somebody else a chance even if you're doing a good job, look at this. Prevalent across every country we studied, the biggest segment. So these are clients that we as agencies just have to learn to understand and speak to and resonate with, unless we choose to stay very small and really go after that sort of would-be thing, which is certainly a tactic for certain agencies.
Sorry, just a question. For the playing the field, do you find that they're taking that whole budget and giving it to, like, you today, you tomorrow, or?
No, they're saying, I'm going to give you 12%, I'm going to give you 18%, I'm going to give you this specific thing, and I'm going to give you this other thing. So one of the things we're going to talk about, the implications of this, is if you want, so a great segue, none of these segments are good or bad, but they are all good or bad for your agency. So part of this is understanding how your agency model, the way you make money, matches up with one or more of these segments, and then we're going to show you how to do some content things to attract them, like, you know, bugs to a light. Not that I think clients are bugs. But anyway, we're going to help you do that. But what we are saying is that it will help you to understand who your clients are, and you're already now thinking about your clients and going, oh, they're one of this, or oh, they're one of that. So we're trying to just help you manage that, right? Question? We're going to show you that. Why they divide up the budget and what they're looking for. Yes.
Quick question, sir.
Yep.
For the playing the field group, dividing the budget, are you guys going to talk about what they expect from you in terms of how to play nice with all the other agencies they're dividing the budget amongst?
We are going to talk about that.
Yeah, we are a little today, but then one of the things we're going to do is we always do this. We're going to do a webinar where we'll walk you through every single question and show you all the data. So that's a much longer conversation than we have here today. So we'll give you a snippet of it today, and then we'll deeper dive later. Yep?
You said in 2014 that clients value youth over experience.
Yeah.
You didn't say anything about that in the recent.
Because it didn't show up as something that was defining for
Right.
a group this time around.
And I'll show you a slide in a
Yeah.
minute of why I think that is. And I will give you the preview is the clients in 2014 were old. They're not anymore.
They're not old anymore.
So unfortunately, they're now what I would term kids, and they're controlling big budgets. So they want to work with their peers, and they wouldn't call them young and inexperienced because it's them, right?
Yep, exactly. Okay, Drew.
Okay, so some differences by budget. Again, you're going to see, and that was the perfect segue, thank you. So look at how the budget size that are controlled by our client contacts under the age of 40. So this group, much less so. Well, odds are you're probably working with a business owner in that segment, and business owners tend to be a little grayer and a little longer in the tooth. But as you get into bigger enterprise-sized clients, they are hiring CMOs younger and younger and younger, and we, of course, are all staying the same age. But so that now we've got, one of the things that we talked about in our study last year is one of the realities for most agency owners and leaders is most of our clients now are younger than we are. And we have to find a way to talk to them in a way that is not like we talk to our children, our adult children, but we have to talk to them like peers. And that's a challenge for some agency owners. Again, look at the bigger budgets, and this is the percentage of them having more than one agency. So it makes a certain amount of sense, bigger budget, probably more sophisticated needs, maybe more enterprise-wide. But also, the reality is if I only have $250,000, it's pretty hard to slice that piece of pie. So remember, this is more likely to be the looking for love, so I'm more likely to want to get married. I want you to be at the table when I'm making business decisions, and so I'm probably not going to have a lot of relationships with a lot of agencies.
And while we've seen this result in multiple of our studies in the recent years in terms of having more than one agency, what this study proves is the fact that these under 250K are also much likely to be those looking for love agencies who don't want more than one agency. They want the perfect agency for them to be with them all the time and forever. These big folks over here are far less likely to want that. Only 15% of these people want that anyway. And as you go up, what you see is this is percent more than one agency, but we see people with 4 agencies or 5 agencies or whatever, or even more.
And we'll show you how the ways that they look at that specialization in a minute. So again, the good news is they are still outsourcing a lot of their marketing. So one of the study we did last year was asking them how they decide when to bring work in-house versus when they're going to give it out to an agency. And many of you are experiencing the struggle with your clients of, oh, I'm going to take that in-house. But the reality is that a lot of them are still spending a big chunk of their budget out with agencies. The bigger the budget, the bigger the percentage that they are outsourcing.
Yeah, and one of the things we have seen in our other studies is this is not related to how big their team is internally. Some of the biggest teams and the biggest budgets are nevertheless outsourcing huge percentages. So that assumption that many of us have had that, it's the little guys who have to do a lot of outsourcing has not held up in our previous studies at all.
Yep.
Just a quick question.
Yep.
And you might have already touched on it, so I apologize if I was oblivious and missed it. Is that assuming that if they had another agency, that the agency would not be doing the same thing as the other agency? Meaning, with that number, one agency did creative, the other one did, the actual spending? Is that assuming that?
No. And we'll actually show you some information, but what we see is folks choosing multiple agencies for a lot of reasons, and it's not just to do a specific thing all the time. Sometimes it's to do a thing about a specific place or a specific audience.
Yes, so I'm super good at something, and they're super good at something. We play well together. It's not a threat.
Right.
We're stacked.
Right.
Well, and again,
Right.
That's our perspective versus their perspective, right? So especially the playing the field, they like that competition inside their agency pool.
They set
right?
that competition up.
Because it puts price pressure on us, right? And boy, we better bring our A game. Yeah. Okay, so really good news if you're here at Content Marketing World is all of these guys are still outsourcing a lot of their content strategy and execution. So if your agency specializes in this, or if you dabble in this would be a place for you to invest some additional resources, to get some additional skills, because there's budget on the table for you around this.
Is that just content development, just purely creation?
It is content development in this case. We do have information in the full study about sort of what they're using, and our other studies too cover a lot of sort of what services they're looking for with agencies and stuff that digs into that a little bit further. Okay, let's talk about using out-of-market agencies. So we defined this as an agency that is more than 200 miles away from where you, the client, are located, right?
So Tom, remember when we said, oh, there's going to be a place where you go, oh, this was it, right?
Yep. So especially once you get over the 250K mark, we have even a majority of these clients, and there's over 1,000 of them that are working with agencies that aren't close to home, okay?
So when I talk to agency owners and I say, tell me about your biz dev efforts, and you say, oh, well, we do a lot of networking and we do a lot of referrals, I'm hoping your referral sources are not all in your local market, and I hope your networking is not all in your local market, because your clients aren't necessarily checking the box of, oh, you're local as a benefit. The upside of that is it means that the playing field for you in terms of getting clients, and we'll show you in a minute why, isn't your backyard anymore. You really can, regardless of your size. I think a lot of small agencies, and by the way, the average agency in the US is 8 people, so you have to sort of level set small. But the average small agency thinks they have to stick to a local or regional footprint, and that is not true.
We do see playing the field respondents more likely to be using out-of-market agencies by a sizable margin.
And remember, these are the guys that want you at the table all the time and the planning and all of that. So it makes sense that they would want you a little closer to home.
So if you're again, that playing the field group, you have to recognize that they are much more willing attitudinally to go with you even if you're not close. In terms of where those out-of-market agencies are located, so this was a choose all that apply, because again, a lot of these folks have multiple agencies, right? So 58% of them say they're working with an agency that is in state, but more than 200 miles away from them. We've got 37% in a different state, different region, 27%, and 12 of them in a completely different country. So a lot of diversity in terms of where people are hiring their out-of-market agencies. All right. We asked these folks working with an out-of-market agency why they chose an out-of-market agency. Notice where affordability is.
You just love that clicker.
I do.
I
Isn't
know.
this great? Like, oh, look at that chart. Look, 16% of them say it was because it was affordable. That is not why they are doing this, okay? Number one, 66% said it's expertise in a particular geography. And that's actually, there are 2 questions in there, or 2 responses, I should say. One is expertise in a geography that we are marketing in right now. And the other one is expertise in a geography that we are hoping to enter. Okay? So this is about a place. So Nancy, Marshall, where are you? So Nancy's agency is a Maine specialist. That's what they do, and they know Maine better than I would argue probably any agency on the planet. That is that type of particular geography. 43% said expertise in an industry vertical or a consumer target or a customer target, an audience, right? 32% in a language. And 18% in a specific type of marketing, SEO
So this is
something
where
like
a lot
that.
of agencies automatically go of like, oh, I'm a PR shop, I'm the SEO shop. Fill in the blank for the deliverable, but look at, in relation, the number compared to you understand my industry or you understand a region or a country
Or our
or
audience.
whatever. Right?
Yep. Now, they do have concerns about working with out-of-market agencies, not surprisingly. Number one, fewer in-person meetings, communication more difficult. The interesting thing to me is that for the agencies working with out-of-market, clients working with out-of-market agencies, this has been trumped by the value of having that specialized expertise that we just talked about. Despite these concerns that a sizable percentage of them have, they are nevertheless doing that. But if you are working with clients who are out of your market, understanding their concerns going in and being able to speak to how you're handling these kinds of things is going to be helpful.
Okay, so let's talk about the agency owner involvement. What do our clients actually want the agency owner to be doing? So when we said, when have you seen the agency owner? Where do they show up right now in your relationship? They said, okay, strategic meetings, onboarding, and the pitch. So again, none of those over 50% though. So they're really not saying they're seeing the agency owner all that often. And we said, do you believe agency owners should be more involved? And so interestingly, and we'll talk about why we think this is, the whoobies, the ones who wrap their arms around your leg, they're less so than the ones who want to date 5 people at once, but they want all of their dates to show up more often, right?
And be like Cosmo models.
And be attentive, right?
Yes. Exactly right. Yeah, one of the things about the looking for love folks is, you know, they're smaller and their expectations about involvement for agency owners appear to be substantially lower. When we look at the specific insight about when they want to see an owner, they want to see an owner at the pitch, early onboarding, but their expectations about seeing them beyond that are much, much lower than the other folks.
Yep.
You know, they know they're fairly small. But look at the numbers here for, you know, larger budgets. There's a majority of these folks saying, yeah, they wish the owner was more involved in their account.
And by the way, that does not mean taking their calls or being their account executive.
Yeah.
Just want to put that out there.
And one of the things you'll see in the rest of the data, because it's a massive study, so we can't go over everything today, they actually believe that owner involvement will result in better work by the team.
Yeah.
You know, so
Yep.
they think it has a practical value.
What does owner involvement mean if you're not taking phone calls and the client?
So they want you around when big strategy is being developed. And interestingly, the middle group, the orange group, wants you to socialize with them. They want you to take them golfing. So one of the things that's true about this group, and it was true in 2014 as well, is they think they're kind of a big deal. And they would like you to behave like they're a big deal. So part of that is whining and dining them a little bit and kind of, oh, we're so happy to have you as a client kind of thing, more so than the other segments.
Yeah, that playing the field segment is also more interested in things like a recognizable agency brand.
Yeah.
And bigger clients and awards and stuff like that. It's the big deal syndrome.
Yep.
Just real quick, on the last one, did you say that the lower, maybe it was one before that, did you say that the lower, wow, I already lost my question.
Yes, we did then. Yes, we said that.
The smaller clients basically were okay with the agency owner not being involved?
I think
Yes.
they know they're not a big fish in your pond.
Is it the small business mentality where
Yeah.
they realize wow, I'm really busy as an owner, that owner must also, because I feel that from my smaller clients, they genuinely look at me, they're like, he's out there hustling, like I don't need as much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're
I'm not like tuning.
They're probably A, more in tune with what it's like to be a small business owner. B, I don't think they feel like they're maybe worthy of as much of the owner's time because they know that their budgets are smaller. And so it's a mix of both a little imposter syndrome and the reality that they're busy too.
They're not
Yeah.
less likely
Yeah.
to say they want it. They're less likely to expect it.
Yeah.
You know, there's pretty universal, like, agency owners should be more involved sort of sensibility. The smaller guys just don't expect that to the same degree. Okay, new business.
All right, so let's talk about some new business implications. So one of the things that this study showed us is that clients are getting even more and more precise about their agency selection and that they are looking for some very specific things. So having more clear question and answer in terms of what they're looking for so that you can see if you match up with that will save you some time. So among all of the segments, this I want to be the partner for all time is going away other than the looking for love folks. So again, they're still expecting you to be an agency that can deliver, unless you are the specialist like we're the PR shop or the SEO shop, They still expect you to be what we all say we are, the full-service integrated agency. But what they want to layer on top of that, that for them is table stakes. What they want to layer on top of that is that you have an expertise that they need. So again, that's either the geography, the industry, the audience, whatever that is. That's how they're going to decide, not the fact that you can do video in-house. For them, they assume you have a skill set inside your shop. Again, we talked about this. They already want more of the agency owner's time.
So content implications. If we look at this looking for love, the Whoopee group, right? Case studies that highlight how you work with clients. Remember, these folks want to get married, and they want to stay married. So understanding the personality of your agency and the interactions they can expect with not just the owner or their account lead, but the whole agency and how it's going to relate to their people too on their team is incredibly important. Talking about technology can be off-putting to folks who have a budget that's $250,000 or less. So talking about it in the context of making the most of every dollar that they are spending and using it for efficiency is really important. Things like having a lunch and learn series for clients or having video where you're presenting something or workshops at a client's office showing that level of engagement can be very appealing. And then, of course, blog posts spotlighting clients and their customers, also helpful. Remember, marriage, how are you going to convince yourself?
Show your commitment.
Show your commitment.
Right.
Vacuum.
Right. All right, so for the playing the field, the largest group, if you're thinking about content because you want to attract that group to your agency, number one, remember, they want to be your most important client. So talking about how clients are a priority, they have access to key players 24/7, all that sort of thing will be critical. Remember, with this segment, you're going to be in the sandbox with other agencies. So talking about how you collaborate with other agencies, and I know you're going to just groan when I say this, and even in your case studies, acknowledging the other agencies and their contributions. Well, I know, will go a long way to make them go, oh, you know what, I'm not going to have to referee this agency with other agencies. They've already demonstrated they know how to play nice together. Talking about deliverables, they want to buy very specific things from us, so being able to talk about, and in your case studies, in your examples, in your videos, whatever it is you are doing, talking about specific deliverables that you and your agency are awesome at executing will attract them to you in detail. And they are, anytime that something's going to be ongoing, because remember, they're dating many agencies at once, so anything that's ongoing like content, so think about what Joe said to us this morning, it's not a campaign, but it's really a religion. You need to show them the process so they can understand why they need to stay with you for that longer term, because they're not wired that way. And then, again, if you are with this group, this was the group that was most likely to be perfectly comfortable working with agencies more than 200 miles away. So making sure you talk about that you have a lot of clients that are not in your backyard, and talking about how you overcome all those things we showed you that they're worried about through technology, or, you know, we get on a plane and go visit every client once a quarter or whatever it is, but you want to be really bold about that. All right, so the single and satisfied, again, this is, remember, they just want to hire you to get work done. You are manual labor to them in a lot of ways. And so taking this attitude of more hands, get more work done in your web copy and things like that. Lots of client testimonials, especially if you can name drop. These guys are very impressed by recognizable brands and recognizable work. And again, this is a group that I already have an idea in mind. I already know what I need to do. I just need to hire some extra hands. So being able to talk about how a client had something already going, you were able to jump in. You're like the Green Beret, right? You jump in, you do your job, you get out. Will be helpful for them. And they don't like to do anything in a vacuum. So the fact that you are going to be able to take existing assets and use them for new things, and how you view content as a bigger picture item that influences other parts of their business, again, will attract these folks to you.
So, of course, as I said, this is a big study, so we've got opportunities for you to sort of learn more about what it said. So As Drew mentioned at the beginning, all of the studies we've done since 2014 are available on our websites, and this one will be too. This is where you can find the ones through last year on my site and on Drew's. And then for this year's study, the opportunity we have for you is an exclusive live webinar where we are going to go through all of this data in a live, interactive visualization and talk through all of it. So you can text AMI 2019 to 38470, and we'll get you the executive summary of this, and you'll also get information so that you can register for this free webinar. And then subsequent to the webinar, that interactive visualization will be available for you to play with. You can filter all this data by client size, by geography, by budget, by all different kinds of things as you sort of work through this journey of which of them are right for you and how best to understand and reach them.
So if you text this number this week, we will send you the executive summary. We are just coming out of the field with this study, so we're putting the finishing touches on the report as we speak. So you'll get that by the end of the week, and then we will register you for the November 12th webinar. You do not have to show up. So if you don't show up, then we're just going to send you a link where you can watch the video later, or you can ignore us completely. That's fine too. So. All right, what questions do you have for us? Yes?
Just out of curiosity, with regards to creating a content plan that shows that you play well with other agencies.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not a huge agency. We're like, we're a couple $1 million. Like, my question is, like, is there anybody in that size that like does a good job saying, hey, I play good with other agencies? And like, I just feel as if I'd be really uncomfortable doing that. But we play well with agencies often, but I just don't feel like I'd go out there and be like, just so you know, we probably play well with those guys. And I'm open to it.
So I would envision, for example, a case study on a campaign where you did one portion of it, where you would acknowledge, we did this, and here was what was awesome. And then our partner, Bob Smith's agency, did this, and then Babette's Boutique did this, right? And you would just sort of do that. So I think a lot of agencies do that well. I know in my world, if they're inside the AMI world and they know each other and they know they're not going to steal each other's clients, it's a little easier. But I'm guessing you have strategic partners that you work with regularly. So you might start with doing that, holding them up in the light a little bit. And then, because all you have to do is give the hint that you're not the end-all, be-all, and you know you're going to partner with folks.
Like McLellan and Collaborator.
Yeah, right, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yep.
and I think
Yes.
I think even if you haven't done a lot of it, talking about how you have a process for making sure that you don't get all tangled up in each other's feet and for communications to work well with other agencies, and saying you've thought about this and you're prepared for that sort of multi-agency project can go a long way, even if you don't have a big record behind you in terms of actually having executed
I
it.
swear to God. Oh, yep. I was going to say, I knew I saw a hand.
So I love the fact that you've done this for 6 years.
Thank you.
Much respect for that.
Thank you.
And the insights have gotten richer, and you've been able to segment them more over time. And just thinking about the differences in the sample from 2014 and 2019, and there's no wrong answer here. There's
Right.
answers. Has the petri dish that you're studying gotten more robust and diverse, or has your microscope gotten better?
Well, certainly our microscope has gotten better, unquestionably, just with sample size and including sort of out of US. We do every study sort of differently, but we are seeing some changes in, even if we limit our current microscope size to the petri dish we had back in 2014. So I think we're seeing both of these things. And you know, our goal moving forward is going to continue to be these sort of large samples and really try to make sure that we are seeing what's actually happening out there, because there are things changing. So yeah, 2014 was our first study, and we were just like, hey, maybe we'll do this and somebody will pay attention. And here we are. This is our 6th with a lot more scrutiny on it. So obviously we're doing everything we can to
And
ramp
I will
it
just
up,
tell
but
you really
yeah.
quickly, and then we'll answer your questions. Our 2020 study is going to be how clients are thinking about and prepping for the recession or the economic downturn in relation to their agency relationships. So we know that's on a lot of people's minds, so we're going to go out and get some answers for you. So yes, you had a question.
I was going to ask about the macroeconomic corollaries and like unemployment rate, if that factored in, but I think you just touched on
Yeah, okay. Yep.
What are clients beginning to in-house now versus?
So our study last year was all about that. And what they said was they pull work in-house because we're not as nimble as we need to be, our processes are bloated and they can't get turnaround time. And when they are likely to let us have the work is when we can do it without a lot of help from them.
Yep.
So if they have to help us a lot, like we require a lot of meetings and all of that, basically they said, then I just like, screw it, we'll just do it ourselves.
Right, and big complex projects, they're a little harder for them to handle, and if agencies can do it just without a lot of babysitting, that's where they're going. But there's a lot of data in last year's study about that, and there is a visualization for last year's study that you can already get and search through and stuff.
So in that study, there's a big list, so you'll be able to drill down into it. Yep. Did you have a question?
Yeah, could you back up the slides if I want? Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yep. Yes.
Did you guys find anything on what they thought or their feelings behind like executive consulting? Like we talked a little bit about how much they'd like to see or what they'd like to see from agency owners, but any breakdown between like one-on-one executive consulting versus agency execution?
We don't have anything
No.
on that in the study.
No.
It's a good question,
I mean,
though.
anecdotally, I will tell you that there are several agencies that we work with that the owner is doing sort of CMO consultation and is charging a premium fee for that time. But I think that you have to sell that very carefully, because otherwise what you're saying is, I'm really awesome, but my agency not so much. And then when you want them to buy agency services, now you have to backfill against that, right? Yep.
So for especially the playing the field segment, are they looking for agencies that are like, hey, our niche is messaging or circuit writing or design, or are they looking for someone who's like, okay, well, you guys clearly know how to talk to pharmaceutical representatives, for example, so people that know how to talk to medical professionals but can do writing and design and video
Right.
and everything. Or do they not care as much about like, oh, well, you know how to talk to these medical people, but you're really damn good at voice.
The answer to that is yep. Both,
Yeah, I would say
right?
probably all of the above,
Yeah.
depending on the situation. But what we do know is that looking for love group is, I mean, the playing the field group is far more likely to be working with out-of-market agencies. They're far more likely to have chosen them, not because of a capability specialization, but again, back to the geography, the audience, the verticals, stuff like that. But we know they're working with a lot of agencies. So they definitely have ones that are out there doing one thing because that's their thing.
And again, anecdotally, I will tell you that I see the financials for about 250 agencies a year, and the ones that are killing it have niched down, right? They have a specialty, right? Whether it's an industry or something, or an audience, whatever it may be, the generalists are struggling, right? Because we're more commoditized. Yep.
Yes.
Playing the field for the opportunity. Do you have any news or don't for prospecting those kinds of clients?
Well, I'll tell you, one of them is you're going to have the top of your pipeline a lot more full, because they don't stick around for as long, right? So if you can get 3 or 4 years of a relationship out of that segment, that's a long dating relationship for them. So well, not necessarily, right?
Yeah. So, what I do is attitudinal segmentation. And what I tell clients all the time is this is about fishing, not hunting. You can't spot these people based on how big their agency is. Even in the biggest budgets, we see people in different segments. So this is really where content comes into play. It's about putting out the right bait. It's about talking about the kinds of things that is going to attract the CMO in one of these segments, and get them into your site, and then give them specific content related to the challenges that you know they're having, the kind of relationships that they want to have with you. That would be my advice.
So one of the things we'll do in the webinar too is we will give you some onboarding questions. So when you get in front of a prospect, there are questions you can ask that will give you some pretty good hints about which one of these they fall into. So you'll be able to sort of categorize them, right? Yep.
So you talked a little bit about agency owner involvement. I'm curious about sort of designated contact person, because I find that there's a lot of diversity. Like some clients really want to go direct to department heads, or versus an account executive versus my position in client services. Some really want just one designated person.
Right.
Any insight there?
So one of the things we saw in this study, if the respondent was not the owner or the final decision maker, We asked the respondent in that whole section about agency owner involvement, the value, whether they thought that would be a value. Yes, overwhelmingly. Would they be willing to help mediate that connection between the agency owner and their sort of ultimate CMO kind of person? Overwhelmingly, yes. And again, comes down to believing there's value in that relationship for the level of work being done. So every individual is going to be individual. We did have a small percentage of people in the study who felt that that kind of social activity was inappropriate between an agency owner and a client, but it's very small. It's like 15% or something like that. The vast majority thought it would be great. So I think it kind of depends on the client that you're going to have. We know that the looking for love clients want their agencies to connect with multiple people in their organization. It's that whole, right, like octopus kind of relationship that they don't want it to be one-on-one. They want their team to know all of your team and vice versa. So I think some of it's a single question you ask, but some of it you can probably guess based on what segment that you find out these folks are calling.
I also think that clients are trainable, right? So if you don't want the client calling the art director and making changes because it doesn't go in the project management system, blah, 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 right? I think you can train them to behave the way you want and go in the lanes that you want. But I think what clients really want, and what frustrates them, and we've seen this year over year, is they want to know if I call Susan and she doesn't answer, then I need to call Tom. And if Tom doesn't answer, that, right? They want to know the...
Be responsive.
But they're pretty good at escalating things when they need to, right? Yes? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We don't have an overt question on that. The reality is, as we do these studies year over year and with the sample sizes that we have, that statistically, as people move in and out, we're going to see statistically similar kinds of results just because we have so many people involved in these studies. But we don't have anything on sort of people moving in and people moving out.
No, although I think you could argue that the bigger budgets and them not being as attached to their agency is a self-preservation move, right? Like I'm going to have several agencies because if I pick the wrong one, I'm getting fired, right? So yeah. I would guess they're hedging their bet a little bit. So this is not from the study. This is just me saying anecdotally what I think. That they're like, maybe if we have 3 agencies, at least one of them won't drop the ball, and I'm going to look good. Other questions for us? Nancy?
Is there anything to clients being able to brag to others that they're with a certain agency because the agency is either the cool cats or
the single and loving it folks, that's what they care about. It's marquee value of agency. So yes. Yeah. For the looking for love, that's about true love. So they don't really care if you're a big deal or not, right? And the playing the field, they have 5 agencies, so they're probably not going to make a big deal out of one of them because they're dating multiple people at once.